Hey everybody, sure you noticed it's been a second. Sorry about that. I am sure YouTube, of course, noticed, as they've probably forgotten about me. Again.
Wait, no, please. Guys, I'll do DIY videos. I'll do daily videos. I'll 10-minute vlogs. What do you want me to do? No!
So I wanted to change things up this week and tell another story about some of my previous D&D experiences. And I've always gone away from the RPG horror story because I've had some pretty good experiences, and the ones I did, it was usually just a minor thing with someone I'm friends with, and I don't want to put them full blast for the internet to see, in the case that they actually watch this. But this one in particular was a pretty crazy story that usually when I tell people they're pretty shocked by it, and honestly it was a pretty ridiculous story, especially in the context that it was my first ever D&D experience. So I just wanted to talk about that, and no, I don't hold any ill will against these people. This was a few years ago. We were all just fresh out of high school and dumb. It's whatever, but it's a pretty funny story to look back on to now. So to set the scene, this will be in a good full year of 2014 where you could actually go out and see people. It sucked. I consider 2014 literally the worst year of my life. But let's see if 2020 can beat that by the end of this year. Just to clarify, the campaign was not the reason 2014 was the worst year of my life. There's a lot of other reasons behind that, and I do not want to get into that right now. That'd be a very long video. At that point, I was a freshman in college, and one of the few good things that came out of this year is this actually the year I met Trey and Dre. So aside from the unification of the Arcane Gate slowly getting crafted there, the year was overall. And at that point, I had never played D&D before. If I have not told you yet, I only started playing with 5e. And there was a very brief run-in at 3.5. I am talking about it now because I never really talked about it up till then, because it's hard to count this as an actual D&D experience. It was something. My experience of D&D in my small southern town was nothing. The only way I even knew what D&D truly was getting told it was either satanic or satanic. I was in a town where literally I was told Magic the Gathering was satanic, and that's one of the more acceptable nerdy things around that time. But in this rural, crazy town, there was a little shining beacon of hope. And that was a bunch of older folks talking about how much they love D&D. And that was Nerdarchy. They got recommended to my YouTube one time, and I was fascinated by it. It was just so cool hearing these guys talk about this game they loved so much, where you could basically build your own world and do all these crazy stuff in it. Me, I was mesmerized. I wanted to do it, especially as someone who wanted to be a writer like I did. So I started trying to gather a group to play. And I am about to expose myself for how big of a noob I was. What I did in that time was I bought the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster Manual to 3.5, thinking that's all I needed. Because me playing the Dungeon Master, I thought, oh, all I need is know how to be a Dungeon Master and know how the monsters work, and I'll be good. So for 3.5, I knew some things about the game, but they made no sense to me, so I have the weirdest knowledge of 3.5. So coming in, yes, I was a complete noob. I had no idea what I'm doing, so it did not help the situation at all. And I couldn't get a group together with my friends because I really had no idea what I was doing, and none could really commit to a time, the worst enemy of D&D, time and scheduling. So I waited until I got to college, kind of had it in the back of my mind I still wanted to play, but couldn't find a group to play with until it got mentioned with that friend that we were wanting to actually get a group together, and there's one guy in the group who was the main focus of this story. Let's just call him Steve. Steve heard about that, and he was just like, hey, you want to play? I could get a group together. I got some DMing experience, and I got excited. I was jumping at the idea. Now to clarify, I have very little knowledge of Steve. The only way I really knew Steve is Dre hung around him. And I didn't really know Dre that well up to that point. We had played Magic a few times together, and that's about it. And D&D and Magic's really what we bonded over, but this was before all that. So I was like, okay, this guy can't be too bad. And to his credit, he was a perfectly fine person. when you were one-on-one with him. He had this very toxic trait about him, though, where if there was other guys around, he had to be the toughest guy in the room, and he would do that by basically verbally putting down other people in the room. I didn't realize that, and it became painfully aware soon. So, with my limited knowledge, I tried to make a character. I made a half-elf rogue, and with my limited knowledge and how hard it is to create characters in 3.5, I had a chimera mess of something that was useless, and I'm pretty sure I burnt that character sheet because I was so ashamed of it when I actually found out how to play the game. So, with my mangled mess of a character and the rest of the group, it was fine. Dre had an awesome sorcerer. There was also 3 other players, and it got interesting. So first off, the DM also had his own DMPC, who was a very broken, powerful character that was given a lot of boons. So that was something. That's a little side note, but that was also just trait of the story. We all got together. We played our first session. I figured out instantly what his trait was because my character was very ill managed. I got targeted for a few jokes, and it quickly became me being the butt of the joke in the group. I know in particular one thing that kept going for the rest of the campaign, and I got pretty thick skin, but it just got annoying after a while, where I just jokingly said, I guess I'm just going to flip the table then because I can't do anything else, and he said, well, I got your horse. I'm like, I guess I'll flip my horse as a joke. And he's like, all right, roll forward. I'm like, I got an at 1. His immediate reaction was like, oh, okay, not only do you not flip the horse kicks you in the dick, and now you have a liquefied testicle. And the group lost it. They all laughed it up, and I got called Uninut for the rest of the time I played with them. Other than that, also, one of the characters in the group who was also a rogue just decided one night, hey, I'm going to steal his shoes. I'm like, okay, well, I gotta... And he didn't allow no roll or nothing. He just said, oh, your character's good enough. You steal his shoes. So, my character lost a testicle, was humiliated, and had no shoes. And to clarify, Dre was not part of the people dogging on me. He was just laughing at the jokes. I mean, it was funny, just how unfortunate the circumstance was.
Editor's note, honestly, I can't even lie. Unina was a pretty funny insult. I can't even deny that.
But I don't want to say he was dogging on. Dre is still one of my closest friends, and this was just an interesting way we first met. And I kept going with it for 2 to 3 sessions. And what was going on was, in college, I had a pretty tight schedule, so when we all got together, I said, hey, I can only meet from this time to this time. And they said, well, we're all meeting at lunch. I'm like, okay, if that's the case, I can only come in for an hour. And they said they were okay with that. So that is on the table. And they instantly just one day disappeared and weren't meeting at their regular time. I'm like, oh, that's strange, okay. And that day I went to library to do some work. I'm leaving the library, and I am not kidding, like a movie. I look through the window of one of the buildings of the college, and I see them all sitting at a table playing D&D together. Everyone was there except me. Now, I am just flabbergasted by this to this day. I was like, oh, okay. At that point, I was just annoyed with this group, so I'm like, okay, whatever. So yeah, that was the thing. And I was annoyed at that point, so I just shrugged it off and thought, you know what, I'm really not having fun, so D&D's not worth it if this is what I'm getting. And yeah, that was the thing. So I moved on, completely forgot about it. A little bit later, someone else came to where we hung out at, and he found out about the whole incident, and he was like, hey, I'm starting a 5e game. Would you like to play in it? I'm sorry that happened to you. And I'm like, sure, why not? And it kind of all went just uphill from there. I had a lot of fun with it. The group was pretty nice, and me and Dre were in the same campaign again, just in a lot better circumstances. And from that point forward, me and Dre played in campaigns together all the time, and we became really good friends. And it's also how I got to know Trey better as well. So that kind of became a funny beginning to it, and the ending of it was, one day they decided to meet back into the regular spot, so I was there. I shrugged it off. They were all just having fun. Then all of a sudden, the girl that stole my shoes called out, hey, I still got your shoes in my inventory. I'm like, okay, whatever. I shrugged it off mostly. Then, after a moment, they made a Uninut joke, and at that point, God, seriously. So I said to him, I'm like, oh, is that why you forced me out of groups? Our character was so terrible. And Steve was just like, oh, we didn't kick you out of the group. We just won't let you back in. Out of everything that happened in that campaign, that is the part that sticks with me the hardest. The absolute weirdest hill to die on I have ever heard of. He's trying to get me in semantics about why I'm not playing D&D with them and why the entire group just didn't talk to me after that. So that was basically the end of it. I was just kind of like, you serious? And he was just like, yeah. And I'm like, all right. I just walked out of the room, and I talked to him a few times since then, but never really too often. And the only other experience I really had with anyone with that group was I brought a 360 up to the school in the room we hung out with a lot, and I set up an account solely for people that played up there, and the other guy in that group straight up deleted my account on Naruto Ninja Storm 3 and just to see what the story was like. Then, as soon as I got in there, I was like, dude, why didn't you pick the other account? He's like, oh, I didn't realize it. And then he looked at his phone, was like, oh, it's time for me to go to class. He put his phone down, walked out. He never touched that game again. I had so much progress in that game that he just snapped. So that is about the end of that. And it's such a silly story. I would like to play 3.5 again, and Brad harasses me about it all the time. So eventually I'm going to, just to see what 3.5 is like in actuality. But yeah, I had a pretty sour experience with it at first. So I don't blame the addition. It was clearly the DM there, but yeah, that's my RPG horror story. You guys want more D&D stories, just let me know. Y'all remember to like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for all the support I'm getting as always, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye.